Welcome to the Get Fit with Jodelle podcast. I am, as usual, Jodelle, and it is an incredible honor to have Clint Ober, essentially the founding father of the grounding and earthing movement as I see it. And he's also CEO of Earth Effects, which is a research and development company located in Southern California that develops indoor grounding products and continues to investigate the health benefits of grounding. And a lot of people have heard me talk about my love for grounding, but not to the extent in more recent podcasts of indoor grounding. I didn't even know that this was a thing until about a year ago. So, Mr. Ober, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Jodelle, for inviting me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share anything I can about earthing.
Okay, great. Well, just a quick bio on Clint. Following a health challenge in '95 and being in the cable TV systems installation industry since the 60s, Clint retired and embarked on a personal journey looking for his purpose in life, and this is where the story gets interesting. So I will let Clint pick it up from there as he noticed people wearing plastic shoes. There was a point in your time when you noticed plastic running shoes, and I want you to start there if you don't mind, and anything I left out, of course. But
Okay.
Something about that enlightened you, yes?
Okay, yeah, that's where it all started. I asked that question 20 years ago, and I had no idea or intuition about the answer. But the reason I asked the question is probably more important.
Okay.
I spent 30 years in the communications industry where we had to ground everything to the earth. And the reason we do that is because the earth has a negative surface charge and it maintains everything electrically stable. It prevents static electricity, all kinds of problems, and you can't run a wire into the home unless it's grounded because of lightning and just all kinds of issues. But primarily, we had to ground everything. So I had a working knowledge that the earth was negatively charged, meaning that about that time, it actually started in 1960. We started wearing rubber-soled athletic shoes. Mm-hmm. And prior to that time, we were always barefoot. And I'm 75 years old, so sometimes people can't relate to what I'm talking about. But anyhow, we were always barefoot or we wore a leather-soled shoe. This is before 1960. Mm-hmm. And if it rained out, you had to take your shoes off and carry them because if they got wet, it would ruin them. Mm-hmm. But in 1960, then we invented the synthetic sole shoes that were very inexpensive. You could produce very inexpensive shoes. So everything switched over to the athletic type shoes and the synthetic sole shoes of all kinds. So anyhow, at that time, I did not know. I just asked the question, I wonder if there's a consequence of the human body, of us no longer being grounded, because throughout all time we were. And at that time, I had a lot of aches and pains and health issues, and I didn't really know what was the cause of anything. And but anyhow, I went home that night and I took some meters out and measured the difference in the potential between my body and the earth when I'm not grounded and when I am grounded. And then I set about to do a couple of experiments. Went to the store and bought a roll of metal duct tape, 3-inch wide, and taped it across my sheet. It wasn't good for the sheet, but anyhow, I was interested in the experiment. But I grounded it with a wire to a ground rod outdoors, and then I grounded a meter to the same ground rod or a similar ground rod. Mm-hmm. And then I would measure so that when I laid down on the tape that was connected to the earth, then my body voltage and I knew I always had earth potential. And I didn't know the consequence of it at all. But the night that I did that, I was laying down and I had a meter on just playing with it. And then all I knew was the next morning I woke up and the meter was down on my side, and I had fallen asleep and had a pretty good night's sleep. And that's pretty remarkable for me because at that time I normally had to take Advil or some kind of a pain med because I had so much. I was a cowboy. I spent 50 years skiing and tennis and everything. And I just had every kind of problem that you could have for a 50-year-old guy. And but anyhow, so I slept a couple more nights that way, and I slept better. And then I grounded a couple of my friends who were in the area, and I said, "You guys got to try this. I don't know what it is for sure, but it works." And so they grounded them, and 3 days later, one of the guys who had severe flaring arthritis, he says, "Do you think this could help arthritis?" I said, "No, I don't think so. I think it just helps sleep." But he said, "My arthritis is way down." Then I recognized my pain was way down. And then I said, "Okay, there's something going on here. We need to figure it out." And I spent, several months trying to find any information, or any literature I could, through conventional methods, universities, whatever. Why does ground affect pain? Or because it was affecting pain. And then when you get rid of the pain, you sleep better. So nobody knew. And I went down to the University of Arizona at that time and met with a couple of people down there. Nothing. And went back to where I was for a while. And then finally I said, "There's something really significant here." So I went out to California. That was 20 years ago. I'm still here. And went to UCLA. And then they kind of had a little bit of fun with me. I thought I was quite curious that anybody would think that you could put a nail in the ground, tie a wire around somebody's toe, and they'd sleep better. And so it was quite an experience. But anyhow, after that, I was able to learn a little bit about how to do studies, and we ended up promoting a local study up in the Santa Barbara area, Ventura, California. And we grounded about 60 people. 30 of them were not grounded grounded with a placebo pad, and 30 of them were grounded with just a 12-inch by 24-inch mat, conductive mat that we put under the sheet and had them sleep on it for, I think, 30 days, 6 weeks, whatever it was. And then we had a nurse that would go out and interview each one of them and pick up the product or the test gear and everything. And we had some really interesting results. One of the best results for a study is nobody wanted to give up. The people who were grounded, hardly any of those wanted to give up their experimental pad. And the other people wanted to throw it at us. Said, "Get this out of here." And so that was all fun and interesting. But what was most interesting at that time, and you can break in and ask questions and guide me anytime you want, but at that time I was, because of my background in grounding and shielding and electromagnetic interference, noise, and everything from the communication industry, I just assumed that it was a lot of the environmental electric fields that are in homes and the static charges that build up on the body, because every time you lift your foot off the floor, if you have a rubber sole shoe on a carpet, you're going to create huge amounts of static charge. And so I assumed that that's what it was all about. So, but when doing this first study, and this is really, really interesting, is one day I had two people that we were grounding, that we were study participants and subjects, and both of them were getting live pads. But the one in the morning that I went to measure the electric fields and everything in the home, and he had a brick floor, stone floor, adobe walls, and no outlets on the side of the wall where his bed was, and his bed was a metal frame on the brick. And he had literally no environmental electric fields. I mean, it was down around 20 millivolts or something, just background noise. And so I said to myself, it's really unfortunate that we're giving him a pad, because he's not going to get any results, because I assumed it was, when you ground the body, when you're not grounded, your body is an antenna, and you attract all of this electrical noise. When you are grounded, then you're a part of the earth, and then it repels. Your body is shielded, naturally shielded, it repels it. And so anyhow, I thought, well, there's not going to get any results in, but he did have significant problems, health issues, cardiovascular, arthritis, um, all of the metabolic syndrome type problems. And so I installed it. Then I went over that afternoon to a lady across town and getting ready to install her, went into her bedroom. She had the highest amount of electromagnetic electric fields that I had ever seen in a home. And I thought, wow, we're going to get great results out of her. The problem was that the pad, putting it in her bed, because her voltage was so high, it wasn't sufficient to bring her all the way down, but it did reduce it significantly. So I thought, well, we'll get some good results here because we brought it down like 90%. And so anyhow, when we were testing her, because her hands were all crippled up with arthritis and she had flaring arthritis in the wrist, and she was in her 80s and she was in a lot of pain. And but she couldn't hold the meter or do anything. So I put up an electrode patch on one of her hands, like an EKG patch, and one on the other. I connected one to the voltage meter so I could measure the voltage, and the other one connected to a ground rod that was going to the earth. And that way we could measure by disconnecting and connecting the one going to the earth. We could tell what the voltage was in the room. And so anyhow, did that. And then after a few minutes, because her son was helping me, she said, well, this one's working, but this one isn't working, meaning this patch. And I said, well, it's not really supposed to do anything except measure the voltage. But again, she said, no, my pain's down here. And so then we said, okay, so I just switched them. And then she said, okay, now this one's working. And because when she was connected to the earth, then her pain started to come down, kind of like what we had experienced earlier. And I didn't know what to think of it, so I just kind of dismissed it. And then, about a month later, when they brought all the surveys back and the subject interviews back, I was looking at these two people just by incident, wasn't really looking for anything. And then I noticed that they both had the same results. And they both had significant reduction in pain, arthritis, and other just general issues. And I said, okay, well, this isn't right. There's something wrong here, because this guy didn't have any environmental electrical noise or any kind of static or anything in his home. Yet he's getting the same results as a person who had extreme environmental noise. And so I spent the next 6 months going out, and then I recognized and I learned that when you connect the body to the earth is negative, meaning it's negative 20 millivolts. And what that means is there's an abundance of free electrons, excess free electrons that can move and reduce charge. So then what I realized was that when you ground the body becomes negatively charged. And my background told me, said, well, as long as the body is negatively charged, you can't have, the word inflammation wasn't in the language back then, but you can't have charge in a grounded object like a amplifier, transmitter, receiver, antenna, anything. So, and that's why we ground everything, is to prevent charge. And so here we have a body that what we did is we changed it from being a positive environmental electrical, the charge on the body, to being negative, no charge on the body. So then, am I on track? Am I okay?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay,
you're good.
All right. So anyhow, so the question was, now we really were at a loss, because we would talk to scientists, doctors, and whoever, and they just kind of all laughed off, and they said, well, what's the mechanism? How do you know this is working? What is the mechanism of action? And we didn't know. And so we went, and the next study was a study where we grounded several people a similar way, but we measured cortisol every 4 hours for 24 hours. And then 6 weeks later, we went back and did it again. And and they were sleeping on the grounded mats. And we didn't care about the placebo effect because we were measuring cortisol. And when we got through here, we had the cortisol in these people was kind of like spaghetti before, all over the place. And then after they all slept grounded for 6 weeks, their cortisol all synchronized into a nice, circadian band. And so we knew then that we learned two things. One, cortisol, the grounding reduces and normalizes cortisol secretion. But the second thing we learned was at 4 o'clock, everybody's cortisol spiked, increased significantly. And if you don't have high cortisol in the morning, you can't get out of bed. That's what early morning fatigue and all that. And that's when they have most heart attacks, because of low cortisol in the morning. And so we said, what could have caused that? Because there was no light and there was no sound. There was no environmental cue that could have triggered the body to know what time it was 4 o'clock. The reason and the second thing that we had 3 stewardesses from New York that started in the study, but we removed them from the study because their cortisol was off 3 hours from people in San Diego. And so we had a 3-hour time change. So we ended up figuring out, basically, when you touch the earth, you get a signal from the earth and it resets your internal biological rhythm. So if you're traveling across country, you get off the airplane, go stand on the ground for 15 minutes, and it will normalize your cortisol, and then you won't have the jet lag. So anyhow, what we learned was that it's the amplitude of the Earth's electric field at 4 a.m. that triggers that spike in cortisol. Now, everybody has it to some degree, but when you have all these people and it all sync up and everything is perfect, then you know that the Earth is the mechanism of, the Earth's electric field is the only thing in the environment that could have produced that. So that was a good finding. And then we went on and we had lots of people report that they had reduced TMJ, all kinds of other anecdotal reports. But we were looking at cortisol and we were measuring heart rate variability, and we had significant improvements in heart rate variability, which means, again, that's your ability to get out of a chair and your heart to speed up and compensate for it, and the dynamics of the heart's ability to function. So that was a good finding, but we didn't understand it. So we ended up meeting a cardiologist by the name of Dr. Steven Sinatra at a convention in Southern California. And we sat there and had a lot of fun. He's really a pleasant guy, and he's very popular. And we grounded him and grounded a few of his cohorts at a convention we were at. And we were talking about pain, telling him what we were doing. He says, Clint, if you're reducing pain, you need to be studying inflammation, because nobody can have pain unless they have inflammation first. Pain is a byproduct of inflammation. The body is being oxidized. Tissue is burning. That's what causes pain. And that was a pretty odd comment to me, because I thought inflammation was you sprained an ankle and it ballooned up, which there's a lot of pain there. And I've done that a few times. So anyhow, at that time, he said, you need to be researching inflammation. Well, you go to research inflammation back in 201, 202. Wasn't in the literature, wasn't in the language. And then all of a sudden, I started running across how the immune system works, and how if you have a pathogen or a damaged cell in the body, then the body will release, or the immune system, white blood cell, the neutrophils, they will come over to this pathogen or damaged cell and encapsulate it, just wrap themselves around it. And then it releases reactive oxygen species, which are, the word reactive means that they're electrically charged molecules. And what they do is they rip electrons from the pathogen or the damaged cell, and that's how the immune system destroys pathogens. And I said, okay, the immune system is electrical. And then, so we went down that path for a while, and we now knew what was happening is when we're grounding the body, these reactive oxygen, we were supplying an abundance of free electrons to the body. But that's how the immune system works. But if you don't have enough redox potential or enough antioxidants, I guess is the popular word, then there'll be some excess reactive oxygen left over, and it's reactive, meaning that it's looking for a donor, and it's going to attach and steal an electron from something in just a few nanoseconds. It's not going to sit around. It's going to actually steal something. So when people talk about antioxidant, what they have is oxidative stress damage that's been done by this process, but they don't have, an abundance of radicals. Anyhow, but then as soon as one of these reactive oxygens steals an electron from an adjacent cell, let's say a healthy cell, rips an electron from it, then another immune system message goes out to the immune system. There's something still here getting me, so another neutrophil comes, does the same thing. So you end up with a chain reaction, and it's like a log on fire. Your body is on fire. Your body is inflamed. That's where the word inflammation comes from. And then Ritker and the boys back at Boston, Mass came out in 2004. They had the article in Time magazine, where the cover of Time magazine was showing the word inflammation, the body on fire. And they said, you don't have cancer, you don't have arthritis, you don't have any of these health disorders. What you have is chronic inflammation. And this inflammation will manifest differently in different people based on their genetics and their environment, their lifestyle environments. And so some people it'll be as cardiovascular, somebody it'll be cancer, and so on and so on. And so then all of a sudden I recognized that what we're playing with here is something very important, because if inflammation is the cause of all of these modern, what they call now, degenerative health disorders, then we know the cause. Because if the body's grounded, you cannot have inflammation. It is impossible. And to verify that, we did lots of studies, and we are still doing studies. We have 24 peer-reviewed published studies now. But it's really quite simple. Anybody who has chronic pain, all you have to do is ground them, and in 5 to 10, 15 minutes, the pain is gone. And so when the pain goes away, then the immune system can respond. Rather than sitting there fighting its own fire that it's creating, now it can restore itself and go back and repair that damage, and go back to doing what it's supposed to, maintain the body in a natural, healthy state. But the most interesting thing about this, and I grew up on a ranch, so is animals in the wild don't have cancer.
That's right.
There's no cancer in coyote, rabbit, deer, elk, so on. There's no cancer. There's no arthritis. There's no lupus, no MS, no autism. None of these modern health disorders, no Parkinson, nothing. But the animals who live indoors with their owners manifest the same health disorders or similar health disorders to their owners. And they have a death rate of 50% from cancer. So this is environment. For sure, it's environment. So then we went on and on and on, and we just kept doing studies, only because everybody said, well, for anybody to believe this, you got to have 12 studies. And I said, okay, well, then we got our 12 done. And then, we need to do more research. So we ended up doing 24. You could go on and do studies forever, because the average guy, this is kind of an assault on the ego, that something as simple as standing barefoot on the earth can reduce and prevent inflammation in the body, which is the precursor to most of the modern health disorders in the world today. So this is about nature. This whole thing is a statement that we have disconnected from nature, and our bodies are now on fire. And so that's where it all stems from. And so I don't know where to go from here, but
that was
goes
what
on forever. Okay,
I wanted to hear your side of the story. I wanted to hear where it all started with you, because really, because of you, there is this movement towards grounding, and it actually shouldn't be that way. It should be that this is natural for us to just know that we need to be outside.
Yes.
But unfortunately, this indoor nation and this modern society has programmed us to forget that we belong on the earth. And I'm so glad that you reminded us of that, and that you've come into this society and brought so much of a gift to us of knowledge of that we need to get back to this. And if you don't mind, there was an excerpt in your book. I have your book here, Earthing, which, by the way, is one of my favorite books. So, but I wanted to read a little excerpt so that people can understand, and then have you touch on why and how it's so important to ground, like how we can ground. I mean, there are
Okay.
several ways, but
Yep.
this is what a portion of your book says in chapter 2. Your planet is a 6 sextillion, that's 6 followed by 21 zeros,
Yep.
metric ton battery that is continually being replenished by solar radiation, lightning, and heat from its deep down molten core. And just like a battery in a car that keeps the motor running and the wheels turning, so too do the rhythmic pulsations of natural energy flowing through and emanating from the surface of the earth keep the biological machinery of global life running in rhythm and balance for everything that lives on the land or in the sea. And then it says people, animals, fish, plants, trees, bugs, bacteria, viruses. All of these are essential to their life is essential to being grounded and being part of what you said, Earth's potential. And I want you to just share with us, how can people ground? How do we develop this Earth potential? And can you talk more about that?
Okay, well, first of all, we need to know what it is. It's when if you can envision that the Earth has a very thin blue layer of invisible marbles, and it covers the entire surface of the Earth and the ocean, and so when you stand on it, then your body absorbs all of those electrons, because what it is, it's a sea of electrons. It's just a total sea, and it's like oxygen. We can't see oxygen, but we breathe it. Without it, we will die. With these free electrons, I personally believe, I know that if this negative surface charge or these free electrons didn't exist on the surface of the Earth, there could be no life on Earth. When they pronounce a person dead, that means the brain stops functioning. There's no more electrical activity. So everything in all life is electrical in nature. Our bodies are the most electrical thing in the environment. We ground everything else, but we don't ground the body because we didn't know. But anyhow, all of the animals, we have done plants, especially sunflower experiments, grounded versus ungrounded, especially the cut flowers. In 7 days, the ones that are ungrounded fall over. All of this is on the earthinginstitute.net. And then the ones who are grounded, they stay nice, and their life expectancy is significantly longer. Plants grow better when they're connected to the earth rather than in a flower pot that's not. So it goes on and on and on. And it mainly the indoor animals, they're all sick today, just like the owners. They're going back and forth to the vets and so on. So how do you ground? The easiest and the best way to ground is to go outdoors and stand barefoot on the earth, take your shoes off, put them wherever. And then if you're a tenderfoot, you can't walk or you can't touch anything, then take a chair with you and just sit. Put your bare feet on the earth and just sit there and experience your body becoming negatively charged. And how you will experience it is you'll feel a little energy coming into your body, but then you'll be able to breathe easier. Your pain will start to diminish, and all of a sudden you'll be happier. And there's two components in here. One is the earth itself, but the other is sunlight. We live in homes today that we don't get any sunlight. We have roofs over our head. You have to have sunlight because it's the other part. It's part of all of this. And vitamin D is an option, but you really need some of that sunlight because there's much more to it. But grounding and so anyhow, that's the number one way. If you don't have a yard, then if you have a patio, we'll sit on the patio. Put your feet on the concrete. The concrete, if it's on the earth, it's grounded. If you want it to be real grounded, then put a little moisture on it and just put your feet on it. So those are simple and it's free. And that's one of the things that when I first started on a lot of this work, I would work with some people at the NIH and various other in California. And I remember one of the gals in California, she says, "Clint, we know what you're doing and it's really great, but don't go out there and tell people, well, it's going to get rid of cancer, it's going to get rid of any of this, because that's the doctor's purview and all of that. So what you need to do is make your case, but then you have to have a no-cost option, meaning go outdoors, put your put your butt back on the earth. And then you have to have low cost options, meaning so that anybody can afford to get grounded in a way that'll be beneficial. So what we did in our studies, the first thing we used were just simple electrode patches, and then a simple conductive mat that you would find in the ESD industry or other industries, and where you can't have charge, like software factories, all of those kind of places, people have to be grounded all the time. So we would make, the little mats, 1 foot by 3 feet, and you could plug it in, and it's conductive, so you could have a snap on. You can plug it into an electrical ground. There's a tester that comes with it. Connect it to the snap, then put your feet on it, because the pad is at earth potential, and then when you put your feet on it, then your body goes to earth potential, and then in most people's mind, where the inflammation drains out of the body, it's not exactly how it works, doesn't matter, but the pain dissipates. So you can stand on it, sit on it, sleep on it, put it under your keyboard on your computer, put your hands on it. So it's what we call the universal mat. Very inexpensive.
Mine under my feet right now.
Yeah, very inexpensive, and I think they, But anyhow, so that was one product. So, and the reason we never intended, or when I started on this, we had no idea. We had no concept that we're going to be in a product business. I was kind of retired, and I just wanted to find out the consequence of all of this. And but anyhow, but the subjects and the researchers all wanted the products. So the patches were readily available via, some hospital. Well, they're not readily available. I guess you can't go to Costco and get them. You have to go to a medical supply store. And then the cords we had to, so everybody wanted all the products. So we would give them away and to their subjects, and then other people would want them. And so occasionally we would make some up and give them out. And then we would do larger mats that you could sleep on. You could put underneath the mattress, underneath your sheet, put your sheet over the top of them, lay down, go to sleep. It's called a ground plane. We created pillow covers and various things. But again, what we were trying to do is find now that we know that this is the cause of so many of these modern challenges we have, that we need to find the most effective way, the most affordable and the most effective way that people can ground themselves and get the benefits of reconnecting with the earth, because they're not going to go back outdoors and live on the earth. So we have to bring Earth's electric into the home. We have it in the home in our grounded outlets. Your refrigerator is grounded. Your computers are often grounded. Motors are grounded. Lots of things are already grounded, but humans aren't. Your telephone lines coming, everything is grounded. But anyhow, so the easiest ways are very simple. Taking, if you have an old home with a cast iron tub or metal drains in your home, you can just go take a nice hot bath, because the water will be grounded. If it's a plastic tub with plastic pipes, probably not. Same with showers. But there are simple ways that are free. Most of it and most effective is do what we did in nature before we had houses. Sit down on the earth, put your hands and feet on the earth, touch live things, and so on. But anyhow, the mats, I don't like to push product because I don't see myself as a salesman. But the mats are important, and especially for anybody whose health is compromised. If you have hot flaring pain, then the patches are really, I think they call them ground therapy patches, and they are really beneficial. They'll put the pain out. I don't care. You can have any kind of a flare, lupus, arthritis, MS, and there are lots of other type flaring things. Just ground the hand, and if your wrist is flaring. If you've just had surgery, ground the area where the surgery is, not on top of the surgery, but near it, because what you're doing is it's like pouring water on the fire. So when you ground the body, you cannot have that. Like if you have surgery, after the surgery, you'll have the hot burning pain that you take the Vicodin and those kind of meds for.
Mhm.
But when you patch the body, you don't need those meds, because what causes that hot burning pain is oxidative pain. So the neutrophils are not going, I mean, any excess radicals from the neutrophil are going to be automatically reduced because your body's negative, and they won't attack and steal electrons from the healthy tissue. So that way you don't have the fire, the burning effect, the inflammatory effect. You will have the healing effect, which means leave me alone, don't touch me. I need to heal, I need whatever, but you won't have the burning pain. So that's what grounding is all about. The second thing that, well, I can go into, that's another story, but products, getting people grounded. For $59, $69, $89, you can buy a mat or two mats for the same price. They have products that they've, back and forth on earthing.com, groundtherapy.com, that you can get. You'll find something, and just use the least expensive thing that is available, or what you think will serve you, and start. And then if it works, then start doing more, because your health is the most important thing that you have. And as you get older, and I'm now 75, going on 76. And when I was 50, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. But today I don't have the pain. I don't have the health issues. I don't have all the meds. I don't have all the stuff that I see all of my counterparts. And it's really important because it affects everybody's life in your family when you have health issues. So it's your responsibility to, become, to assure that you have good health. And what you do that is, if you have ill health, you have something in the environment is interfering with your immune system to maintain health. So you have to remove it. It could be mental, it could be food, it could be all these things that are bad for us. But on the other hand, we know the grounding is something that's missing, so you have to add it. And I hate to say it, but I don't hate to say it, I know this, that the most important thing you can do to benefit your immune system and restore your health is to get grounded.
I agree.
There's nothing you can do that will have the results. You can go to the Earthing Institute, you can see there, watch the Earthing movie. It's free on YouTube, no commercials. And the Earthing book is available out there, free somewhere here and there, libraries, or generally they send you one when they send any product out. Yeah.
And so here's how I looked at grounding when I finally figured out that you could do it indoors. Was I saw it as a supplement is to eating right. Like, we take supplements to supplement our diet when we can't eat all the right foods. And indoor grounding is that supplement. It's the supplement of the earth. And I, for years, I even built my home as a concrete slab so that I felt like my feet were on the earth. I was grounded. I was as close as I could be. So I did that, but I didn't know. And here was where the information was lacking. Is I knew about grounding mats, but I didn't know that bringing them in would not cause electromagnetic field. I thought that if anything you plug into an outlet was going to cause me to have more EMF in my home. So I would see them and I'm like, well, I don't want more of that. I don't know how it mitigates the EMF if it's plugged into an outlet. But I was naive to the fact that when you're plugged into the bottom prong, you're not bringing in any electromagnetic fields. You're actually, I guess there's actually a resistor on the product as well.
Well, yeah, you're not bringing in any electromagnetic field. That's the reason we ground everything in the communications industry, in the electrical world, is to prevent EMI, electromagnetic interference. Electric fields that are radiating from wires in your home that are not shielded, that's electromagnetic noise. And so when you ground something, it's like the reason you ground the housing of all of these, there's two reasons. One, if it's technical in nature, you're doing it to prevent interference. If it's refrigerator, you're doing it to prevent an accidental short in an electrical thing, and also lightning. So but grounding is when you're grounded, like if you can't have inflammation in your body when you're grounded. That's the most important. Second of all, you can't have EMF inside your body when you're grounded. It is not possible.
Yeah,
Goes
that's like
against the
my
laws.
favorite aspect that I learned.
Yeah, but nobody. It's really hard. There's so much noise out there about. It's like, remember I told the story about the lady and the older gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
One of them had like 20 volts of EMF kind of noise, and she went down to like 2 volts. So she still had 2 volts. Well, most homes in the United States have 2 volts. A body charge on your body just walking through the living room, especially in your bed, because when they built your house, they put the 2x4s up, and before they put the wallboard up, the electrician came by, and at waist high, he took a drill and he went through and he drilled holes in all the 2x4s. Then they put electrical wires through those holes, up to outlets, up to ceilings, down to outlets and switches and whatever. And so you can plug in your end table devices and so on. So anyhow, then they put the wallboard back up. So an inch behind that wallboard is bundles of Romax electrical wiring. So when you put your bed up against it, which everybody does, then they put their pillows up against it. So now your head is 6 inches from a bundle of Romax. Now, if you want to worry about something in your home, that's what you want to worry about. You can unplug your lamps. You can move things away, but you can't. I mean, the only thing you can do is turn off the power to your home. Well, most people can't do that, won't do that. But anyhow, if that were the problem, then we would all be in very serious trouble. And I'll tell you why. Most people don't have any problem with EMF. Most people do not suffer from exposure to EMF. The people who suffer from exposure to EMF are really suffering from adrenal fatigue, meaning something happened in their life and they went into a state. It's like whenever I talk to ladies who have lupus or MS or ground them or any of those type of autoimmune related health disorders, I remember one day I asked one of them, I don't know, what is our time? Is our time okay?
Yeah, you're fine. Okay.
So I asked one of them, I said, she was like 45, 50 years old. I said, you weren't born with MS, were you? And she said, no. And I said, what happened? I mean, when did you get it? And she said, I've had it for about 3 or 4 years. And I said, do you have any idea what caused it? And because the doctors say there's nothing they can do for it. Get a comfortable bed that goes up and down and get a big TV screen because there's nothing they can do for it. And she said, she said, no, I don't know what brought it on. And then anyhow, I was getting things organized with her husband for her. And all of a sudden she said, oh my goodness, that's when I lost my son. And and my mother had died a year before and whatever. And she said, that's when I had all of the stress. And so I kept asking that question anytime I would deal with any of these ladies who had autoimmune disease, and every single one of them, they had a period of loss. Something happened. They had a severe illness. They lost their job. They lost their house. They lost a relationship. They lost a child. Something significant happened, and then they went into a chronically elevated sympathetic state, meaning their body was stressed. And so when you get stressed, then your digestion shuts down, all of these things change. Your cortisol comes up and starts circulating. And normally, then if you maintain elevated cortisol, then it's going to eventually cause anxiety, irritability, and more pain. And then that's going to create more cortisol. And then all of a sudden this keeps going. And that's what your weight gain and your depression and all these things are all tied to that. And so anyhow, I tried to. I can ground somebody and put the fire out, and I got involved with Deepak Chopra and a few other people because somebody needed to help these people let go or get mentally grounded. But anyhow, as time went on, I recalled when I was a child and young, let's say 10, 12. I spent a lot of time in the pasture because we had cattle. And some summers we would have just an explosion of jackrabbits. And so you'd be sitting there watching them because they're all over the place, and that's the only entertainment you have other than watching a bunch of cows eat grass. So anyhow, the coyotes would also, there'd be a lot of coyotes when there were a lot of jackrabbits. So here's a jackrabbit, he's sitting there just eating grass all day long. That's all they do. They don't pay much attention, they just eat grass. Mm-hmm. And coyote eats rabbits. So the coyote is forever sneaking up on a rabbit. And the rabbit's sitting there eating. Then all of a sudden, he senses the coyote. The ears spring up, and the coyote lunges. The rabbit springs, and he starts going zigzag back and forth across the pasture. Mm-hmm. So he can keep one eye on the coyote at all times. The coyote is chasing him, and he's kind of zigzagging. But 99% of the time, the coyote will run. Then all of a sudden, he will stop. He runs out of energy. The rabbit will run just a little bit further. He doesn't waste energy either. He's not going to just keep running. They're just going to run a little bit further, and then he stops. And he will sit there. The rabbit will sit there and be quivering like this because he's just had his life threatened. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you can just kind of see the shake, and then all of a sudden, he has a big shake. Mm-hmm. And then he goes back to eating grass like nothing ever happened. Mm. And so that's a cortisol effect. That's the fight or flight response. And it's in all animals, and it's in us. Mm-hmm. And so I began to look at all of the autoimmune diseases, the chronic, especially the women with the lupus, MS, cancer, a lot of these serious issues. And I began to recognize that, if you have a loss or you have a life experience, our cortisol, our fight or flight system responds to everything. If there's a noise, somebody drops a glass, boom, it's just like the rabbit. The cortisol spikes, the input. And so there's so much noise in our environments at all times. So our cortisol is constantly spiking like this. And so what we end up with is we're living in a chronically elevated sympathetic state or chronically elevated cortisol. Mm-hmm. Cortisol eventually creates inflammation. Mm-hmm. Inflammation creates anxiety and irritability and stress. And if you don't take your shoes off after you've been exposed to, the day's stress and ground that out like the rabbits do or like the animals do, the animal world, then you're going to go to bed and you're going to have all of this. You won't be able to sleep because your cortisol is elevated. Right. You have aches and pains and irritable and, whatever. So it's really important, if you can't do anything else at the end of the day, I don't care what your situation is, go outdoors and ground yourself for 15 to 30 minutes and get rid of the coyote, the effect. Yeah. But all of these, but go back to the women with autoimmune diseases and significant issues. Almost all of them, they suffered an extreme loss or a great loss, or something to them was a great loss. Mm-hmm. And anger and irritability and all of this stuff builds up. And life's not easy. Raising children and finances and just everything that goes with life, it's not easy. And if you don't manage your stress, if you don't get the inflammation out of your body, every time, like an athlete, you're an athlete, every time you go and you exercise, whatever, you're creating inflammation in your body. Mm-hmm. You need to ground that out afterwards. 15 minutes, ground it out and get it out, and then you don't have delayed onset muscle soreness.
Or work out barefoot. That's what I
Yes, exactly. And we've done lots of studies on delayed onset muscle soreness up in Eugene, Oregon, with the athletics. And it's important. And barefoot, it's like you can lift more weight when you're barefoot. You have greater range of motion. You have you just are a different person when you're grounded. When you're grounded, you're open. It's like you'll see in the movie, if people go watch the movie, that you see the red blood cells as soon as you get grounded. Mm-hmm. They all separate, and And what they do is you have when you ground the body, the blood becomes grounded. So the negative surface charge on the earth, on the red blood cells, becomes identical to the earth. And now they can repel each other, and the blood is thin and more viscous, can get in and out of the capillaries. And so it's just dramatic. I mean, it's just absolutely dramatic.
Yeah, the aspect that I loved, so the part that I noticed when I got a mat and I started sleeping on it, because I've always struggled with sleep, but when I started sleeping on it, there was a vast difference in my cortisol level, and that's what I noticed. Like, I could tell that this was the one thing that had brought my cortisol down, because like you said, I'm an athlete, I have a business, I work for a business, I have a 5-year-old that I homeschool, so I had a lot going on, and I'm a creative thinker. My mind's always going, and so I needed something to bring me down, but it wasn't a supplement that did it. It wasn't a certain diet that did it. It was the fact that, like you said, I needed to shake out my energy at the end of the day. And I had always gone outside and put my feet on the earth and sat out there when I'd work on my computer to try to mitigate things and stuff. But I wasn't sleeping for 8 hours grounded. And that was the difference for me. When I could allow my body to discharge for 8 hours, that's when the biggest bang happened for me with my cortisol. And I saw it within the first night even. And to go further into that, I feel like it gives the body a chance to heal then all of the issues that it hadn't had a chance to, because stress and cortisol had to stay so high within the body, even in a child. So I put a grounding mat on my daughter's bed, and we had just got them. And like 2 nights later, she came down with something. I could tell she was getting sick. And so I didn't do anything. I didn't give her anything. I just said, go to bed, lay on your grounding mat, stay there all night. And she woke up the next morning and she was fine, gone, nothing, no stuffy nose, no anything. And that has never happened with her before. Normally when she starts to get sick, it would be 4, 5, 6, 7 days, depending on what the cold was. But this was like nothing. And she woke up just her happy, chipper little self. And I was like, okay, the only thing I did different was the grounding mat. And so there is something to immune function and allowing the body to finally repair some things that it hadn't had an opportunity to. So talk about that.
Yeah, what happens is when you have inflammation and fatigue and all of these things going on in your body, your immune system is challenged. It can't compensate for all of this. It has limited resources. And your parasympathetic, I mean, your adrenals become exhausted. The sympathetic overdrives, and that's what creates the more pain and stress. But as soon as you put the fire out, reduce the inflammation, you will automatically, you cannot have inflammation when you're grounded. So you reduce the inflammation, then the immune system is no longer fighting the inflammation that it has been creating because of no ground. So now the immune system can go back and restore health, because that's the only thing it knows to do, is return the body to health.
And there are so many people dealing with, like you said, autoimmune issues, or just a weakened immune system in general, to where they are coming down with all these different things that are in our society. So another thing I wanted to ask you, this I'm kind of moving into a different topic here, but are there areas of the world or of the globe per se that will ground you better than others? Because recently when I was in Hawaii, and every time I go to Hawaii, why do I feel like that is like a healing land? Is there more ground potential in areas like islands that are surrounded by water?
Well, one, there's less noise, less environmental noise. And, you know, it's like a tree when it's grounded. I mean, the earth, I mean, a simple way to think about this is maybe, you know, the earth has an electric field and it extends forever, but it's really strongest up to about 6 feet. So here's a tree, it's grounded. And so if you're near a tree, then 6 feet below it, beside it, and from the earth, you're in this Earth's electric field, so it's very quieting to the nervous system. But yeah, there's not necessarily more ground there, but the moisture, there's more humidity, more moisture, I think, and so yeah, probably more.
So
but
really,
just being in Hawaii, it's a mental thing.
So really, anywhere that you can put your feet on grass, on concrete, on even gravel, you can. It doesn't matter what part of the world you live on; it's going to give you the same benefits.
Right. Think of it this way: everybody has touched a doorknob and got a static spark.
Sure.
So if you go out and touch anything that's grounded, even for just a minute, you're going to discharge certain levels of this energy. If you want to shut down the inflammatory response, we know it takes around 15 to 30 minutes to get the best results. And then after, the longer is better.
Sorry about that. We are swimming in a sea of EMF, like we were talking about, like with Wi-Fi and everywhere you go, Bluetooth on everybody's phone, and everybody's got their little rectangle that we're always being exposed to the EMF. And I've always been an advocate of you've got to lessen the load of EMF. And that was one aspect that I loved about being on a grounded matter, being outside, is you actually are mitigating the effects of EMF. But what about like all of this popularity with electric cars? So not only are people ungrounded when they're in a vehicle, but now they're in an electrical-fied, EMF hub, if you will, driving around. What do you think about that?
I don't really know. I mean, I have, I know that 60 hertz electric field, static electricity. I can tell you a little story about truckers.
Okay.
20 years ago, when we were first playing with all of this stuff, because I knew static electricity was part of it. And I know that when you're sitting in a car, the back of the car seat is stationary, but the bottom of the seat goes up and down as you're just bouncing along with the road. And even just little vibrations on the road. So your body is sitting there going back and forth against this back seat. And so you're tribocharging. So you're creating lots of static electricity on your body. And when you have electricity on your finger, it's also inside your lungs and throughout your gastrointestinal and respiratory system. So you are stressed. And the body, goes back to the bear in the woods concept. When we were kids, we're talking about Hawaii, we would go out, and if there was a bear around, you could feel him, but you couldn't see him, you couldn't hear him, you couldn't smell him, but you could sense him because he has an electric field. You have an electric field out here, and they sense you. They're very sensitive. The hair on your arms are very sensitive. So now in modern world, there we were always naturally grounded, so we had this clarity of the environment. We could hear a bird miles away. Everything, we were in tune with everything. But now we don't hear anything in nature. It's totally wiped out. But first of all, our bodies are charged with lots of static electricity, no matter what kind of clothing. If there's any poly in your clothing at all,
right,
or wool or various things, it's going to create huge amounts of static. The truckers, we grounded them just as an experiment. We just grounded them to the frame of the automobile. And we didn't know if they'd get results, but we thought they would, because the chassis of a vehicle is connected to a 12-volt battery, so a negative side of the battery. And so there's free electrons on the chassis. And they're not really free, but there's electrons there. So anyhow, what we did is we made this little pad, about like so, connected it to the frame, conductive pad, connected it to the frame. So when you sit on it, then your body sweats just a little bit, and it hydrates your clothing as soon as you sit down or lie down. And then, so they were grounded, and we measured this. And then I remember the first time we did a study, we had like maybe a dozen more truckers. We went to a truck stop in Castaic, California, and got permission from the truck stop owner. And he said, I'll get you a dozen people. So he told a dozen truckers that he knew. He said, go ahead and try what this guy is asking you to do. And I said, he'll even pay you $25 to do it, and $25 when you send back the report. And so we did about a dozen. And so the reports we got back was, which we did not expect, was improved night vision. That was one of the number one. Number two, they had more energy. They had less pain, less fatigue. And so the idea was, so it was just the normal stuff. Everybody was better just by removing static electricity that's caused by tribocharging. So, but it goes to say that all of this noise in our environment, it is affecting us. The only thing you can do is you have to, grounding is going to protect you more than anything else from all of this environmental noise. There's nothing else that will do that except removing it, and you can't remove it. You can't tear your house down and rebuild it. And most people aren't going to live in a tent. So grounding is very important. The next thing is mental. Don't stress about things. Do something. You know, this understand this adrenal fatigue is exhausted adrenals is from remaining in a chronically elevated sympathetic state for too long. You burned out the adrenals. So restoring the adrenals is the one of the main things you can do. And the way you do that is you have to ground mentally. What's real in my life? What isn't? What's important? What isn't? If I can't afford my car, get rid of it. Start removing stress and keep letting go of anything and everything that is creating stress in your life, and back up until the stress is gone too. You wake up in the morning, you're happy.
Yeah.
And you're healthy.
It's twofold. I mean, we ground ourselves physically, and that is going to lower the cortisol. But I love what you said. Like, there are so many irons in the fire that we have that don't really have to be there. Like, all we have to do is take a look at which ones we absolutely need and which ones we don't, and stick to the few that we need and get rid of the ones we don't to lower that stress load on the body. So I love that. No, go ahead.
I can share one thing with you. The average, I say about 60% of the people who buy an earthing product at least are 35 years of age, female. And 99% of our products purchased are female. Men don't. They're outdoors. They don't have the issues. They won't do anything until they have their first heart attack about their health. But anyhow, the majority of our business is those 35-year-olds buying grounding products for other people, primarily their mother that they're responsible for now, and their relatives and their sisters and girlfriends. So because she's a caregiver. I mean, at that age, she's caring for her mother, her children, and whatever. So but there's nothing wrong with that. But it's these 35-year-olds. They buy it for themselves because they're in trouble. They use it for 3 or 4 days. It benefits them. They give it to their mother, who is in more trouble than they are. Then they go buy another one for themselves, and then they keep doing it. That's kind of how the business works. I mean, it's not that we promote it.
I did that, and I'm 39, so I fit your age category.
That's what I mean. It's that age group, and up to 55. It's probably 25 to 55.
Yeah. In your book and in the Earthing movie, there was some talk of weight loss. And
yes.
Now, I stay relatively lean, but after I started grounding every night, and I was grounded through the day because I take it to work with me and whatnot, and I'm always barefoot. People that know me around town know that I have dirty feet all the time. Yeah. But I noticed when I could ground at night and just add that to my life and just be grounded most of the day, is that it was really easy for me to just get even a little bit leaner. And I know in the book they mentioned they weren't sure about weight loss. I guess the studies aren't there, but the kind of the episodal studies are of just different people talking about it, and even on so what do you think?
Well, no, it's very real. We hear about it all the time, especially since the movies come out, because there's that one person in the movie that talks about weight loss, and so we hear about it all the time. And I've known about it for a long time, and even with myself. What it is, it's very simple. What is the cause of weight gain? It's eating. Yeah, why do we eat? It's not because we're hungry. It's because because of how we feel. Yeah. And so as soon as you ground the body, you put the fire out. Anxiety, irritability significantly reduces. People's demeanor change. Their circulation improves. There's something about touching the earth or grounding yourself that is spiritual too. I don't know how to address that, but it's when you touch the earth, then you are electrically connected to every other living thing on the earth. When you put shoes on, you are totally disconnected. You might as well be an astronaut on Mars. But anyhow, when you reconnect, there's a calming that comes over the nervous system. The chronically elevated sympathetic state diminishes. That's because the pain comes down. But most of all, the metabolism normalizes.
Mm-hmm.
So you get rid of the inflammation, the immune system restores itself, the metabolism returns to normal. Now you can eat and you have energy. You can get up and do things. And so it's an automatic thing. I think it's like I try to tell people, sleep is autonomic. If you're not sleeping, your cortisol is elevated. There's no other reason on earth that you can't sleep that we know of. And the same here. If weight, natural normal weight is autonomic, your body will maintain certain weight profiles based on genetics and everything. But if we're not in those normal ranges, then it is chronically elevated sympathetic state. I mean, parasympathetic. I mean, exhausted adrenals, overdriven sympathetic. It's just, so if you calm that, then now you can get out of bed and you can actually go walk or get motivated to go walk.
Yeah.
It's about motivation. But when you're pain and sore and you're depressed.
Would you say it also has to do with that, the instance of the Schuman resonance, where the Earth has a pulse basically of 7.8, and then our alpha brainwaves are the same. So it's, in a sense, connecting to the Earth is almost calming to the brain, to where we're not crying out for that extra energy from food to keep us going.
Well, yeah. Well, just being grounded, and I mean, electrons are nutrition. That's why we eat.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're getting them free from the Earth, I mean, you have electrons going in that you're consuming and breathing, and they're going through certain ion channels and various systems in the body, and there are dielectrics. Nothing is running free range in the body. But when you ground the body, then the ground, I mean, there's just a reservoir of electrons in the body that they mop up charge.
We can actually feed off of electrons, to where, like, I explained it to one of my friends recently. It's like, do you know those days when you're out at the pool on the concrete slab and you're in the sun all day and you're being a lifeguard and you're not hungry at all? Like, it's hard for you to have an appetite. It's because not only did you get nourishment from the sun, but you got nourishment from the earth because you were connected to the earth.
Yeah.
We're getting a little short on time, so we'll start to wrap it up. But I wanted to ask one final question about supplements. So as a nutritionist, I'm always recommending certain things if someone needs it. And we talked about how those earthing mats and the grounding mats are actually a supplement to the earth.
Yes.
But are there supplements that can actually help you ground better? Like taking something like colloidal silver, like these elements, or copper or something like that. Would those make you more conductive, or are we just as conductive enough the way we are?
If you're going to take anything, just take a good mineral supplement, as far as I know. Now, adding anything, adding any one thing to the body all by itself and again, I come from an animal husbandry background.
Sure,
So you have to be very careful, taking a super dose of one thing. But, balance is important. But I don't know enough about, I know if you put too much of one mineral on, it can deplete and offset other types of minerals and stuff. So I would think that just a good complex of multi-mineral is probably where I start. And then drink water, and if at all possible, drink spring water.
That's such a good point. Yes, we need to be, we're made of water, and we have to keep replenishing it in order to be conductive.
One thing that I always try to point out to people, that the body is much more intelligent than we give it credit for.
Absolutely.
And I living in Montana, I remember you would go up north and you would have a lot of the Indian tribes living up in Lake Larange and that area up in Canada. And they lived on fish and berries year round. I mean, they would dry fish, they would catch fish, they would dig pits and throw the fish in and let them rot or whatever. And then they would take the oil, and that was their lighting and also their oil. And then they would dry them and whatever. But and then other areas where people never eat meat or never eat berry, all they eat is green and whatever. But the body has, and the gut bacteria is so important in all of this, that it produces, most of your gut bacteria is produced vitamin B is produced by gut bacteria in various, but the body synthesizes so much that you kind of have to stay in tune with it and try to be as natural as possible. Try to be, supplements, if you're going to take them, they have to be high quality from the right, and I take supplements. I'm 75. I have to. I can't eat enough good stuff. And
no, you're so true. Sometimes we just have to get out of the body's way and do what comes naturally to the body, which is to ground and to be in the sun, to be out of doors, and to eat foods that come from the earth because they have been grown with good electrons. So absolutely. I have loved this, and I would love to do it again because you are a wealth of knowledge on grounding, and I think there's even more things that we could discuss with regard to that. So how can people... how can people find out about you? And also, I'm going to put a link below for the ground therapy mats. Those are the ones that I've tested and recommend. So
I would go there, and then as far as myself goes, the earthinginstitute.net. That's where we put all of our studies and put all of our a lot of reports, a lot of questions and answers. That all is pretty much there, and there's people there that can answer questions. And the main thing I push is the movie. It took me 20 years to pull this together, and it's authentic. It has some very credible people, and it in essence helps you grasp what this is all about.
Yeah, it's really well done, and everybody that I've forwarded it on to, and it's kind of required homework for all of my clients. But everybody loves it. Like, they get really enjoyment out of watching it too. So I highly recommend that. Yeah, and I definitely want to have you back on, and I appreciate your time today. And so after this, we're just going to all go outside, right?
Well, that's what everybody does. They go outdoors immediately and stand on the earth, especially after they watch the movie.
Yeah, I know. It's so powerful. I love it. Well, thank you again, Clint. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jodelle. And anytime, just let me know.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
What's up, YouTube followers? Just a quick promo code for you of my show sponsor, dropandfbomb.com. You can get healthy oil packets like coconut oil, MCT oil, and their little pork sticks, salt and pepper pork sticks, no hormones, no nitrates, no artificial anything. Just really great ingredients that are quick and easy and on the go. Use my code GETFIT, GETFIT, to save 10%. And go to dropandfbomb.com today to get your packets of on-the-go convenient foods, healthy convenient foods. And it's a healthy way to drop an F-bomb today.